for a very liberal person. All what I want is just a normal discussion, and all what I want as an academic, let's say as an intellectual, and you are the ones who can judge me, is to talk openly about some issues, talk openly about some problems, be it in Norway, be it in the United States or Germany or in the West, that are of concern to me, and not just to me, but to my son, to my wife, and to my nephews, or for that matter, to my family. I certainly would be the first one if I was to encounter a crowd of people yelling, throwing bottled beers, and yelling, or even using slogans or some insignia which is not allowed and which is against the law. So whatever I may think about the legal or jurisdiction or the legislation here in Norway, whether good or bad, I still have to abide by the principles of that legislation. And if that legislation gives me, if your constitution gives me right to free speech, of course I want to use that free speech. And I would again encourage you, if I may, do it and try to within your environment, in your circumstances, at your workplace, you can always get your message through. It doesn't have to be very academic. You don't have to be an intellectual, but fight for the truth, whatever the truth may mean in your specific circumstances. And I hope I'm not philosophizing too much, because this is, after all, a very painful issue, not just for you, but for most of my colleagues, literally from California all the way to Croatia, you see. But I always keep saying it's not them, it's frequently us. I know very, very well that if some sort of a plebiscite, just to give you another example, a little bit extreme, if a plebiscite was held in this country, you know what plebiscite means, a referendum, and if Norwegian citizens were asked, would you like foreign immigration to stop, or would you still encourage more foreign immigrants to come to Norway? I'm sure that roughly 75 to 85% of Norwegian citizens in the plebiscite would say no, we don't want more foreigners in this country. Am I right or wrong? I'm 100% right. If you ask the same question in a putative, in a hypothetical plebiscite in Germany, you would have exactly the same answer. So basically, all what I want to do is just to raise those issues, discuss about those issues like foreign immigration, identity, communitarianism, postmodernity, from a critical perspective, and not just from the perspective that we usually see in the media. Again, having said this, and I hope I'm not pontificating too much, we do have means. And I will tell you, I frequently get nervous, that's not a good expression, I get annoyed rather, that's good. I get annoyed by some of my colleagues, be it in the States, be it in Europe for that matter, tell me, no, nothing can be done, we don't have the media, we don't have money. No, that's nonsense. This is always an alibi for sloth. This is always an alibi to say, no, I don't want to do it. You can do that. You do it, as I said, with your lingo, with your way, within your trade, and with your ways of expressing yourself. It can be done. So often people say decadence, we live in a decadent society, but precisely if you just go home and drink beer or smoke dope or something, or just forget and shrug with your shoulders like this is also a form of decadence. Of course, there's always a certain risk involved. Like back in the communist Yugoslavia, where I lived and where I worked, there was a certain risk. And I know there was a certain risk for me. After all, I'm still paying, quote-unquote, the price for it. Under normal circumstances, if I can be a little bit personal, I know that I could be perfectly a dean at some prestigious university, whatever that may be, prestigious, in the United States of America, or for that matter, that I could have a good chair in sociology or in political science at the University of Oslo and teach students something, some normal stuff, not some stuff about, we'll talk about this, but some normal, classical stuff. And yet, given the nature of this society, which is basically, as I say, Norway is just a replica, if you wish, a Nordic replica, a colder replica of what's going on in France down south in Avignon, or for that matter in the United States of America. I just want to make those things clear, dear friends. So I'm not certainly encouraging you to do some stupid things, and again, I would encourage you also, if I may, listen to some of my shows that I have recorded on my radio shows, The Voice of Reason. I will let you know later on, where I'm talking about those semantic distortions and the manipulation of our language. I spoke with some of my friends a while ago how important the language is in our communication. The problem is, look, I can't help if the other guy, the other with a capital O, if he calls me, for instance, a fascist or a Nazi. But precisely, we should draw a certain advantage from this pathologization, if you wish. My enemy will call me whichever way he likes. Well, I'll just shrug my shoulders and I'm proud of being called that way. So I cannot help it. You see, if somebody calls you, for instance, that you're a Nazi or a fascist, what does that mean? It's no longer a descriptive nomen, if you wish, a word for a specific political movement or political adherence. It has become just an ugly word. It's a shut up word. You see what I mean by that? It's a shut up word. So basically I would, since I do not speak unfortunately the Norwegian language, I would suggest to you always in your communication, use the language of your opponents. Try to play the game of your opponents. What I mean by language, you don't have to recap, of course, their ideological stance, but try to formulate your sentences in a way that they will not find offensive. If they call you, as I said, those bad names, well, what the heck, I can't help it, you know. Do you see what I mean? So I would certainly like to devote the lecture to this semantic distortion, because those words have become absolutely meaningless nowadays, like fascists or Nazis or anti-Semites. It's not myself. I'm not using them for myself or describe myself. I'm using different words. Having said that, let me now, and I said I'm not going to sound, I hope, too academic. I will let you ask me questions afterwards. Let me talk about this identity, what exactly that means. It means nothing. I must tell you, since I know this academic environment, it's become a very flashy, very snobbish word, identity. I think so people sometimes start to scare you, and some of you may assume that universities are meant for exceptionally intelligent people. Nonsense. I know it firsthand when I studied for my PhD in the United States of America. A bunch of my professors, I can tell it now in retrospect, were very mediocre professors, would-be Marxists, would-be leftists. Students were so-so, not very bright. Well, there were quite a few minority students because it's typical, you know. Here is an argument that you should use. It's a federal law. It's also German, I'm sure, in Norway. This affirmative action that notably a given quota of non-European, non-white students or professors have to be hired, or for that matter even government officials, simply because it's a law. So even, let's say, a guy who works in the Harvard University, or for that matter even officially the State Department, is a government official, even if his IQ is rather low, let's say 70 or 80, he must be hired simply because he fits into the category of quote-unquote oppressed minorities. And we shall talk about this a little bit. Now this is something really